Reed Talk is supported by Reed Design. With the power of machine learning, Reed Design derives patterns and trends that accurately predict the characteristics of finished reeds. Founded by Logan Asterling, Reed Design makes quality reeds with characteristics you can count on. Save valuable time and get back to what you love, making music. Visit reeddesign.io to learn more. And also by Ugly Duckling Oboes helps every student succeed, offering both in-person and online lessons. An authorized dealer of Fox, Fasadi, and Buffet instruments, we offer sales and rental of new and used oboes. We sell reeds and oboe for all levels of oboists. Let Ugly Duckling Music be a part of your student's success story. Like us on Facebook or go to uglyducklingoboes.com.
Welcome to Reed Talk. I'm Courtney Miller.
And I'm Margaret Marco. We are so thrilled to welcome Linda Strommen to Reed Talk today. Linda Strommen is the professor of oboe at Indiana University's Jacobs School of Music, a guest faculty teacher at the Juilliard School, and a faculty member of the Interlochen Arts Camp and the New York String Orchestra Seminar. Welcome to Reed Talk.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be with you, and thank you for inviting me for the series. I've listened to a number of the podcasts, and I've just enjoyed them so much. I really feel like I've gleaned from my colleagues and their knowledge and their information and their discoveries. So I think it's just a really wonderful program. So thank you.
Thank you. We're just delighted.
Thank you for listening. Speaking of gleaning information, can you tell us about your reed-making mentors and influences? What is the best reed-making advice you've received?
So I'd probably say there are three people who have been most influential in my life for reeds. And the first is my dear and late teacher, John Mack. I'm really grateful for him for investing in my life, musically, personally, and with reeds. And basically, when I was in school at CIM, he would ask me over on Saturdays to watch him work on his gouging machines, tune oboes, and things such as that. I had been playing since I was young, and I started reed making in 6th grade, and I was really hungry for information. I really was fascinated by reed making and mechanical things. So in my first year, he set up a graph gouger for me, and he showed me how he did it. And then I proceeded to accidentally chip the blade.
Oh no.
So with that, then he said, well, now it's your turn. So he had me redo the blade and showed me how, of course, and then set up the gouge again. So it was from that point on that I did my own gouging machine work, of course, with his help, but that was really super influential. Also, I worked with him at the John Mack Camp as his assistant for 9 years. And then we taught together at IU and when he was teaching at Juilliard as well. So I had a lot of time with him. And, he worked on the gouging machines and did reeds and tuned oboes. So I felt like the influence was just really, really meaningful to me in his mentorship. The other two people who I feel have been really influential are Elain Douvas and John Furrillo, really simply through our close work together through the years, and we continue to do this. Elaine and I gave reed classes together many summers at our Interlochen camps and then at Juilliard, and it was from there that we developed our reed-making materials for teaching our own students. Initially, they were just to teach our own students, as an outline. But recently, they've become Chapter 3 of Graham Salter's book, Understanding the Oboe Reed, which was published a few years ago. So you asked about the best reed-making advice, and I'd say it's probably from John Mack. And there are two things. One is that the sides of the reed need to hold themselves tightly all the way to the top of the reed to have stability and possibility. And the second thing is probably to make reeds for what they do, not how they look. So he modeled and used a system of objective tests, the read-alone test, then on the oboe, rather than measurements. And I just found that so important, even though I feel an eye for symmetry and detail is important as well. It's a diagnostic tool to evaluate the reed. But nevertheless, the objective tests were really important to him and have become really important to me. He could decipher almost everything he needed from his tests, and he'd alternate those with looks, and then he would scrape until the reed was nearly finished, simply from those. Then he'd put it on the oboe. Because I spent so much time with him, I decided to analyze these tests and the process of using them. And basically, that's what Elaine and I call our objective reed tests in our reed chapter. We go into detail about the tests, and that's what John Mack did, but he really didn't verbalize it. He just did it. He was just such a great mentor, and I'm just grateful for him and his advice.
And congratulations to you on your chapter that you co-wrote with Elain Douvas. It's an amazing, probably one of the most thorough guides I've seen for reed making. It's so helpful to students and professionals alike. It's so beautifully and accessibly laid out. I'm just so grateful for this resource, and I'm sure many oboists are. So congratulations to you on your wonderful work on that.
Well, thank you.
Do you think you could tell us how that all came about and some of your favorite parts of that chapter?
Sure. Well, as I mentioned earlier, Elaine and I had been teaching these reed classes together for a number of years, and these materials were born out of that. And really, it was an outline just for us to give our reed classes, just to be sure we didn't forget something. And we kept tweaking these over 20 years, and I finally posted it on my website. And then Graham Salter said he was scouring the internet to find materials. And this was about 4 years ago. And he asked if we could contribute to and co-author the chapter, The American Reed, which is chapter 3, since our materials were quite comprehensive and in-depth. And so we worked for the 2 years to refine our materials so they'd be more fitting to reading instead of something that we would present in a reed class. And we really poured over every word since it was to represent our knowledge and experience. And we would send our materials back and forth to Graham Salter for his editing approval. We also had our former students from Juilliard, Julia DeRosa, Ryan Roberts, Melissa Hooper, who were really helpful soundboards because they would let us know if something was not clear. So that was wonderful. For my favorite parts of the chapter 3, I would say they are 2 diagrams, or a diagram and a grid. The first is the diagram of a reed. It's on page 120 for those who know the book, and it's called Suggestions for Scraping. It details where to potentially scrape for various needs and what each part of the reed affects if it's scraped. So I just think this is one of the magical tools. The summary grid for objective evaluation. We use this when a reed is towards the finishing weight. So the grid includes 4 things and all the detail that goes with it. So the read alone tests and how to do them, the oboe tests and how they correlate to similar reed test, the qualities desired and affected in a reed. And this is our reed vision, what qualities we would like our reeds to have, and then where to scrape to get there. To me, it's magical and it's systematic, and all the tests confirm themselves to get the qualities that we're hoping for. We wanted so much to share these materials because it does give a systematic approach to what can be a complex art. And we're hoping that these materials are really valuable to those who have the book.
Oh, they are incredibly valuable.
It's changing things. It's just so eloquently written.
Can you tell us any more about your setup as far as your oboe or the gouge that you use, your shaper tip, your favorite kind of cane?
Sure. Well, I play on the Leray Royale oboe. It was John Mack's newest Royale from about 2004 before he departed. So I had spent a lot of time with him at the various places, John Mack Oboe Camp, IU, and Juilliard, when he was tuning the oboe. So I felt like I understood the oboe. And he tuned the note, let me try it, back and forth, till he felt it was closer. I tend to be intuitive about the tuning and mechanical things. So when I was able to purchase the oboe, it was just a real treat for me because I felt like I understood it. I'm soon going to be probably switching to my Leray B series copy. just because I've had the Royale for so long. And this is a copy that Elain Douvas made for me out of John Mack's wood. It feels a lot like my Royale, and I'm looking forward to spending more time with that. I also have an AK that Elain made, which was about the same time, and I like that as well. As far as a gouging machine, I primarily use a Furrillo gouging machine, which I have John Furrillo set up for me, since I just don't feel like I have time to do that anymore. I did it for so many years, everything about it, grinding the blades, chewing the blade, everything, and I just feel like I don't want to do that anymore. And it's a relief to have someone do it for me, and John knows just what I like, so I'm really grateful for that. I also use the annullity machine, and I took last year to really try to get to know the annullity gouge because a lot of my students are using it. I also have other machines, but those are my primary machines. I'm using a Mack Plus shaper tip currently, but I'll probably return to my Mack Pfeiffer tip. This is an original tip that Mr. Mack made when I was in school. It's one of the 10 or 12 that was made, and to me, that's a really special tip, and I haven't been using it because of my Royale being a little lower in the high register now. But it's different than the current Mack Pfeiffer tip, and it's just slightly different with a sense of depth and yet pitch holding. So I've loved that tip, and I'll probably go back to when I switch my oboe. I use two different kinds of knives. So I use a Landwell Strommen model knife, and he has been making this graciously for me for about 20 years. We did it all by the phone initially, and I went to see him about 4 years ago, and it was so much fun. He's just a wonderful gentleman, and I really understood what he was doing, and we're just starting reproduction now. The difference of that knife is it's basically a regular medium Landwell, but it has a little bit more hollow ground, specifically with a certain cut, and then he leaves the edge a little bit less refined because I have a specific edge that I want to put on it. So that's a very specialized thing. I use a diamond stone to resurface it, and it takes less time to do because of the way it's made. And then I use an India stone that's really well gridded to refine the edge. This is really just like John Mack did. So I use the process of towards me at one angle, away from me at a higher angle, to create the burr or the cutting action, and then back towards me at a flat to shear the burr, and that's what he would call it. Besides a Landwell knife, I also use the Furrillo knife with the jig. I think this system is the most reliable and the least variable of all systems, and I love it for teaching for students, and I get a great edge, and it lets me work on especially the early stages, but even the final stages very, very quickly. It's important to me to track specific elements of my reed making. I've been doing this since I was in school, so it's been a long time, and I have books of my charts and what I can learn from them. So basically, I have a basic chart that indicates the date I made the reed number, and the cane source and the batch, and I have a log to further identify with codes, and then the diameter and inconsistencies of some sort. I'm very detailed with that. I indicate also there's a place for the gouge and the number of the gouge, and then the shape I'm using. I also indicate the staple I'm using, and basically I do use Gloton staples right now, and they are patterned after the old Luray and Gloton staples of the early 80s, 70s and 80s. And this is basically a similar staple to what the Stevens were patterning their staples initially. With this staple, it's a little bit more oval than some staples. I use a 47 millimeter staple, though I may switch to 46. So the length of the reed, basically have a way I gauge my length of tie. I want the reed, the cane to close on the tube 1 to 2 winds before I reach the end of the tube. So for me, with my tubes and my shape and the diameter of the piece of cane, it tends to be somewhere in the ballpark of 72 1/4, though I will alter that for a need. I record the measurements also. Measurements are important for me to learn something especially, and not to waste time. I will make a a reed if the measurements have some variation, but it's mostly learn something. So I have actually 9 places I measured